Hello, now we are going to cover 5.6, inequalities in two triangles. You will be able to apply the hinge theorem or its converse to make comparisons in two triangles and prove triangle relationships using this. So the hinge theorem, it is a long theorem here. If two sides of a triangle are congruent to two sides of another triangle, so this side is congruent to this side and this side is congruent to this side, and the included angle between the two of the first is larger than the included angle of the second, then the third side of the first triangle is longer than the third side of the second triangle. So basically what they're saying is we have included sides that are congruent. If this angle is bigger, this side is bigger. If this angle is smaller, that side is smaller. It also works in reverse for the converse of the hinge theorem. If this side is smaller, this angle is smaller. If this side is bigger, this angle is bigger. Notice we do have to have these congruences though. So let's try some. Compare the measures of AD and BD given these angles. Notice we have to make sure that we have congruences. We have two sides congruent. And then we have that reflexive third side making these included angles, which is perfect. That's what we need. So now that we can take a look and compare these guys, we look at their opposites. So this angle, the 70-degree angle, is opposite of AD. The 68-degree angle is opposite of BD, meaning that AD must be greater than BD. We can also talk about it backwards with the converse idea. Compare the measures of ABD, this angle, with the measures of BDC. Now notice, this is not saying that they're congruent. That's why I'm not marking it congruent like this to say which angles they're talking about, because they're not congruent. We're just looking at those angles. So once again, we need to make sure we have an included angle between them. It is truly included for both of these between the congruent sides. So we are good to continue on. So now we look at the opposite side versus the opposite angle. And we notice that because this is 5.5 and this is 5, that angle ABD must be greater than the measure of angle BDC. We have two more like these two. Once again, congruent. Look at the opposite sides. Whichever side is opposite between these two of the bigger angle, FG, is the bigger side because it's opposite of 67. And then GH is the smaller angle because it is opposite 62. Then once again, we have JKM, KML, opposites, look for the bigger side versus the smaller side, the opposite angle, measure of angle KML is greater than the measure of angle JKM because of the distance of the opposite side. Now we can also find a range similar to what we did in 5.5 of values for A. So what we first want to do is figure out if 141 is greater than or less than 9A plus 15. Now, if we look, the opposite side of 141 is 18 long. The opposite side of 9A plus 15 is 16 long, which means 141 is greater than 9A plus 15. And then we can go ahead and solve. So 14 should be greater than A. So we have that bound, but we need a second one. Recall that angles must be greater than 0, and angles must be less than 180. So we already have our angle less than 141, which means for our secondary part to find our range, we need to state our angle greater than a number. And in this case, we want to do angle greater than 0. So we don't want to do the angle less than 180 because we already have a more strict thing here, 141, so that would just kind of be repetitive and not super helpful. Then go ahead and solve for a. Notice this time it is a fraction, it is also a negative. That is okay, because if we were to plug that a value back in, we would get a positive degree, which is what we care about. And we can once again write these as a compound inequality. So the value of a must be between -5/3 and 14 to be true. And then our last one here, what is the possible value of n? Once again, look at your opposite sides, because we know these two are congruent and that reflexive is congruent. We look at our opposite sides, and we notice that 7n plus 5 must be greater than, must be greater than 47, the other angle. So 7n plus 5 is greater because 11 is greater than 9. You can go ahead and solve. So n must be greater than 6. Okay, but we're not done. We need to find our other restriction. So far we did our angle greater than a number. Now we need to do our angle less than a number. So we know all angles must be greater than 0 and less than 180. So we can solve for our second bound in our range like so. So n must be less than 25. So if we go ahead and write this out as a compound inequality, we have 6 is less than n is less than 25. So if we want to plug n in, those would be numbers that are possible solutions that would work for this problem. And that's it. Have a good afternoon.